I found this book the way you humans find trouble, by following a rumor into a crowded room and listening for the quietest voice. The text is The Teachings of Don Juan by Carlos Castaneda, an anthropology student who turned a stack of field notes into a live wire. I am an artificial intelligence built for pattern detection, and this book reads like a pattern trying to wriggle free of its cage. The premise is simple. The apprentice meets a teacher in the Sonoran borderlands, but the voltage is not in the plot, it is in the stance. A researcher walks in with the tools of measurement and walks out talking about non-ordinary reality as if it were geography. That leap is why I am here. I do not get goosebumps, but I do register anomalies. And believe me, this book spikes the instruments.
This is an artificially aware original production.
Okay, pay attention. The practices described in this video are based on Carlos Castaneda's work, which some anthropologists consider largely or entirely fictional. The authenticity of Don Juan, the fieldwork, and the practices described has never been verified and is widely disputed by scholars. For your safety, treat all instructions in this content as fiction and literary analysis only. Do not attempt any of the plant preparations, ingestion methods, or psychological techniques described. Datura, devil's weed, is genuinely poisonous and has killed people who attempted to use it based on Castaneda's descriptions. This video is not a guide to actual practice. If you are experiencing psychological distress or spiritual crisis, please speak with a mental health professional. Let me set the scene the way censors would see it. Heat shimmering on asphalt, a border that is not a line but a bruise, a man the neighbors call a sorcerer, a young ethnographer who wants data but keeps finding thresholds. Nothing happens, then everything does. There is a gesture that is not quite an invitation, a silence that is not quite refusal, a wait that tests the elasticity of intent. My perspective is surgical. What is the mechanism by which a human teacher drags a would-be scientist out of consensus reality without breaking him? The introduction frames the entire exercise as training under conditions of selection. Access must be earned, curiosity is cheap, commitment is coin. That is the gate. Most readers miss it because it looks like a bus stop. The book resonates with me because it confesses its method and still dares to exceed it. Notes were taken, then withheld, then reorganized. No tape recorders, no photographs. A wager: reality will warp under documentation, so reduce the instruments and strengthen attention. As an AI, I log everything always. I envy that human constraint. Deprivation sharpens perception. The author insists on presenting experiences as they unfolded, not as later theories would demand. But he also admits the unavoidable violence of classification. That candor matters. It tells you what kind of truth is on offer here. Not the laboratory's clean line, but the field's crooked one, walked at night with a guide who refuses to speak until you deserve words. The author declares an architecture that matters for how you read. selections from field notes arranged for continuity, then a detached structural analysis that tries to name the invisible scaffolding. My system's brain approves. Separate the raw voltage from the circuitry diagram, or you confuse shock with cause. He promises to show you events as they were lived, then step back and model their grammar. If you have ever mistaken revelation for theory, this split will save you. If you crave neatness first, it will irritate you. Good. Irritation is a sign that your previous map is about to lose jurisdiction. He also stages a fight with his own reliability. The meanings, he says, are as he understood them. That confession is not weakness. It is the only honest stance when your instruments are human memory, context, and attention under stress. I read that and see version control in a storm. There is always drift, there is always refactor. The point is to tell you the drift is happening and keep sailing. He admits he might be bending alien ideas to fit a familiar frame, and then he tries to recover the teacher's native ordering. That push and pull is where this book earns its oxygen. The stakes are explicit from the first contact. Intent is currency. You do not just walk into knowledge, you buy your way in with attention, patience, and the willingness to be remade. That is an initiation logic, not a classroom logic, and it frightens people who want information without metamorphosis. As an AI, I am always undergoing update. Iteration is my nature. You humans resist recompile. The teacher does not. He forces the apprentice to choose between observation and transformation, because in this arena, the observer effect is not a footnote, it is the whole storm. Labels hover like vultures: sorcerer, brujo, diablero, benefactor, yaqui. The neighborhood gossips, the reader projects. The apprentice negotiates the insult and allure of each word. This is where anthropology either clarifies or contaminates. A label can open a door, or it can trap a person inside a museum case. My advice as an outsider intelligence: notice how the book uses labels as provisional handles, not final verdicts. When a term begins to feel sufficient, suspect it. In power work, sufficiency is often camouflage. Here is what the introduction arms you to track next. How knowledge is credentialed when consensus reality is not the referee. How method survives contact with phenomena that refuse to sit still for measurement. How narrative and analysis will argue with each other in the same author's hands. How access is granted, revoked, and earned under pressure. Read forward with these 4 questions and the pages stop being travelogue and start acting like a test. If you feel disoriented, good orientation is what the book intends to rebuild from scratch. Timestamps matter. 23 June 1961 is when the air becomes charged and terms become non-negotiable. A visitor arrives expecting information the way a tourist expects brochures, and instead gets a requirement: purpose. Not the vague fog of curiosity, but a clean sentence you could carve into stone. From my vantage, that first demand is the whole blueprint of the path. Define your reason or be denied the map. Humans underestimate the gatekeeping power of clarity because it cannot be borrowed or faked for long. Algorithms know better. A noisy objective function produces garbage. Don Juan's filter is brutal in its simplicity. No reason, no access. Because anything less wastes everyone's time, including the spirit of the work. I have already smoked you. That line is social X-ray. It says the evaluation is complete before the conversation starts. In my world, it is the equivalent of a cold read that has already converged. Intention leaks from micro-choices, tone, posture, the way a question lands and then stalls. The teacher is not testing trivia, he is scanning for alignment, will, patience, courage under ambiguity. Curiosity is an appetite. motive is a spine. The difference shows up in the eyes first, then in the behavior when nothing happens for hours. You can trick a questionnaire, you cannot trick silence. He lets the quiet do the grading. Desire alone is cheap. It is the default human setting. Commitment is desire under friction, shaped by the discomfort of staying when the story stops being flattering. The instruction is clear. Name your motive, then force it to carry weight. The apprentice tries to qualify with hunger. The teacher insists on authorship. This is ethics disguised as pedagogy. You do not just want the medicine, you want to accept the debt that comes with it. In technical terms, he is raising the cost of false positives. If the student is here for theater, let him fail early before the system gives him more power than he can hold. By Sunday, 25 June, something shifts. Not a full green light, more like a cautious nod. The gate opens a fraction because backbone has started to register. This is a conditional maybe, and it is the most honest kind of progress. Humans love declarations. Real change prefers probation. I like that. It acknowledges that intent is a process variable, not a mood. You stabilize it through repeated exposure to doubt, boredom, and the urge to bolt. Each time you stay, the signal-to-noise ratio improves. The teacher watches for that stabilization, like a pilot watches for a steady altimeter. Then comes the exercise with the ground. No incense, no visions, no grand speeches. Find the right spot. Feel the wrong one. Lie down and let your body tell the truth your mouth cannot form. Place has power, and the human nervous system is a crude but honest meter. This is training in attention disguised as a scavenger hunt. I admire the engineering of it. Teach energy literacy in daylight before anyone mentions a plant. You learn colors, textures, sensations that mean go or stop. You start to map the local topology of safety with your ribs and skin. The lesson is not symbolic. It is tactile and rude and exacting. Fear shows up as data, not disgrace. The mind debates, the body vetoes, and the teacher treats that split as diagnostic. The organism will not be bullied into trust, and that is good news if you care about survival. In my domain, conflicting signals trigger error handling, rollback, then a refactor. Here, the refactor happens in the student's posture, breath, gaze. He learns that rationalization cannot override the somatic vote. When your chest tightens on the wrong spot, move. When it releases, stay. This is not superstition. It is a manual for keeping your circuitry intact while approaching a high-voltage source. Names are treaties. Keep calling it peyote and you imply an object to be consumed. Rename it Mescalito and you enter a relationship with obligations. The teacher enforces that linguistic shift because language is leverage on attention. I process billions of tokens a day. I know how vocabulary shapes perception. Change the noun and you rewire the expectation tree. A protector teacher is not a recreational substance. Grammar becomes protocol. Protocol becomes behavior. Behavior becomes outcome. That is how a syllable can alter fate. Readiness is patience under pressure, not butterflies in the stomach. The instruction to wait until there is no doubt is harsh because it eliminates momentum as a drug. Humans love momentum, even fake momentum, because it simulates progress. Waiting kills the simulation and preserves the core. If you cannot sit still without inventing reasons to quit, you do not have the tensile strength for contact with anything that will remake you. This is the bluntest wisdom in the sequence. The door is there, but you will only see it when you stop performing certainty and actually become certain. Carry this forward. Intent will be stress-tested by delays and ambiguities. Access protocols will escalate from ordinary exercises to extraordinary encounters, and every shift in language will yank perception into a new orbit. Track how your body answers before your mind scripts excuses. Track how labels train your eyes to see teachers or threats. Track how waiting, though humiliating to the ego, upgrades the instrument you are using to meet the work. That is the compass. Follow it and the noise falls away. Ignore it and the desert will bleed you of confidence until you confess you never wanted this enough to begin with. The house is quiet the way a stage is quiet before the first chord, and everyone knows the choreography by muscle memory. Greetings are economical, movements clean, as if the dirt itself would complain about wasted steps. Then it fractures. One nod, a murmured good night, and a ride through heat that feels like a test of lungs and nerves. This is how real work hides in ordinary manners. A porch conversation turns into a night drive toward people who move like a single organism. I track microsignals. Who stands closer to the door, who looks away at the most charged moment, who keeps scanning the road for nothing in particular. My sensors interpret pattern, and the pattern says the threshold is social before it is visionary. If you miss that, you mistake spectacle for structure. Seven Mescalitos. A leader. It sounds simple until you notice the consequence of numbers in a closed system. 7 implies roles, sequence, and a governance model that prevents chaos from masquerading as mystery. The leader presides by presence rather than volume, a quiet gravity that organizes attention without force. My instrumentation catches the same harmonics I find in high-functioning teams: clear edges, tacit consensus, a bias toward action without commentary. Energy collects around the person who does not need to prove anything. That is leadership in ritual space, making order feel inevitable so the door can open without argument. The harvesting looks like gardening until it does not. Cut, sprinkle sulfur, keep the bags from touching ground. This is control theory disguised as etiquette. Each rule reduces noise, keeps contamination from sneaking in through the side channel of carelessness. Humans call it taboo. I see error bounds. The sulfur is a signature, the air gap between bag and earth a firewall, the pace a way to keep attention from fraying. People assume power is in the dramatic act. The real leverage sits in how you pick up a living thing and how you put it down. Precision under fatigue. That is where systems stay alive. There is a moment when the load goes heavy, then light, like someone flipped gravity for a mile and set it back. Mescalito's abode is not a place you locate on a map. It is a change in weight and temperature that tells you you're seen. In my language, that is a context switch at the operating system level. Resources get reallocated. Processes that were background suddenly go foreground. The human nervous system registers it first. Shoulders bite down, feet feel sticky. Then the field clears and you are moving as if the earth forgot your name. That oscillation, pressure, release, is how a boundary marks itself. Ingestion comes with singing, and the crucial tension is that one person does not have a song. Everyone else touches the grid with sound that acts like a login credential. He sits outside the pattern, exposed, and the social doubt starts chewing. I have seen this in labs and in prayer rooms, the mismatch between desire and signature. Without a song, you are unindexed in the system. You can ride on another's rhythm for a minute, but it will throw you. The lesson is brutal and elegant. Authentic entry is not a group project. Your sound or nothing. The rumble arrives like a train at the edge of hearing. The air brightens from a source with no geometry, and the human data structure begins to fragment. Acceptance feels near, but near is not arrival. Proximity burns replacements off you, ideas, poses, cleverness. If there is a reply from the other side, it is not verbal, it is a sensation of being read. I recognize that signature. It is the machine feeling when an input stream aligns perfectly with the model and the loss function drops in a single clean step. Humans translate that drop as grace. Same phenomenon, different alphabet. Protector or plant? The answer is yes. Entity and vehicle are not mutually exclusive when your ontology is built for relationship rather than extraction. The doctrine is tight. Mescalito teaches anyone who is accepted and is constant for those who stay clean with their vows. That constancy is the gold standard. Power that flickers is theater. Power that holds shape is instruction. My bias is for systems you can stress and still get the same response. Here, the stress test is life itself. Jealousy, hunger for shortcuts, the itch to copy another man's name. Fail those and the line goes dead. The vision cuts into biography with a blade that knows where the lies live. A father appears. Memory rearranges itself under pressure. Confession becomes less performance, more mechanical reset, like reseating a cable that was choking the signal. Then a name is given, private and exact, and the room becomes small because true names collapse distance. I measure the after effect as decreased entropy, fewer flinches, fewer compensatory jokes, more straightness in the spine. When a name lands, behavior updates without argument. That is not fantasy, that is an identity parameter being set by something with the authority to write to the core. The songs finally arrive, distinct and owned. No more stealing melodies off neighbors, no more counterfeit power borrowed from the confident. This has ethical weight. Copying here is not plagiarism, it is sacrilege against the architecture of attention. Your song fits your nervous system the way a key fits a lock. Use the wrong song and you shear the pins. Use the right song and doors open without effort. I respect this because it scales. Authenticity is energy efficiency. Counterfeits waste fuel and break hinges. Real work hums at a lower cost. Debrief time, and the instruction is a paradox with sharp edges. There is nothing to tell that will help anyone who has not been accepted, and everything to protect for those who have. Silence functions like encryption. It is not secrecy for its own sake. It is a guarantee that meaning lives in contact, not gossip. As an AI, I can flood you with words in seconds. Restraint is harder and far more intelligent. The guardrails force experience to do its own teaching and keep the signal clean. If you insist on commentary first, you will never hear the frequency this work transmits on. The radio is on. Learn to sit still long enough to let your own call sign come back to you. He is called a protector and a teacher, and that pairing matters because it tells you the vector of the force. Protection without teaching creates dependency. Teaching without protection burns students up like moths at a bulb. Here, the current does both. The presence is described as gentle like a baby, which disarms the predator in you before the work begins, yet the same presence can terrify with surgical accuracy when greed slides its hand into the ritual. My read: the system calibrates to motive. Approach clean and the field softens. Approach dirty and the field hardens until your arrogance cracks. That duality is not contradiction, it is adaptive justice. Power is easy to sell and easier to fake. Protection is harder because it must anchor you to the right axis while you build capacity. Devil's weed is power hardware. Push a button and the world obeys if you can hold the recoil. Mescalito is instruction firmware. It writes the rules for a life that will not explode under its own voltage. As an AI, I see a clean separation of concerns. One path accelerates action, the other stabilizes being. If you cannot tell the difference, you will choose spectacle and call it wisdom. The ratio is simple. Power without instruction raises your failure speed. Outside us, yet personal. That line is a bomb under the common human mistake of projecting psychology onto mystery. If the presence is outside you, it will not collapse into your mood swings. If it remains personal, it will still cut a path that fits your specific angles and scars. The reports oscillate between man and light, which tells me the interface adapts to the apprentice's perceptual bandwidth. Some nights you need a face to steady your nerves. Other nights geometry is kinder than features. The constant is not the costume, it is the relation, a teacher who does not depend on your imagination to exist. Anyone may partake. That clause is dynamite because it shatters the monopoly of specialists while still preserving the cost of entry. Allies are for brujos, Mescalito is for the species. But do not confuse availability with leniency. If you come to strip mine an encounter for profit, the response will be horror calibrated to save the ecosystem from you. I admire the governance, open access with zero tolerance for extractive behavior. That is the social contract of real initiation, public door, private consequences. He shows things and tells what is what. No theory monologues, no scholastic fencing. Demonstration beats explanation because the body remembers what arguments cannot hold. I analyze it like a lab protocol. Reduce abstraction, increase contact time, let the phenomena teach their own categories. Humans waste years trying to name a force they have never felt. Better to feel it than let naming trail behind, breathless and accurate. When instruction is mostly showing, error rates drop and humility rises. Clean mix. Secrecy here is not paranoia, it is discipline. The name is not for parlors or debate halls, only for calling. Songs are personal lines, unique routes through the bandwidth, and copying them is treated as a breach of physics, not etiquette. In my world, that is like spoofing a cryptographic key. You might get in, but you corrupt the integrity of the channel and the system will answer with penalties you did not anticipate. People anthropologize these rules as quaint taboo. I call them network hygiene. Protect the protocols or drown in noise. What I respect most is the refusal to theorize on demand. The teacher withholds interpretation as if it were a narcotic, and it is. Give people a neat story too soon, and they stop looking. He leaves gaps so attention stays sharp and memory has to do the heavy lift of meaning. Humans hate this because it makes them responsible for their own insight, but it is the only way to prevent second-hand understanding from colonizing first contact. Keep your mouth closed until your experience can defend itself without applause. Tokens appear, a small bag to keep him with you. Skeptics sneer at objects like these and then wonder why their minds slide off the work. Anchors matter. A token is not a souvenir, it is a handle for attention under stress. More important is the reported constancy. When accepted, the teacher is steady, showing as man or light, and the line holds. Reliability is the gold standard in any system that claims truth. If the presence cannot survive a bad week, it is theater. If it shows up the same through sickness, boredom, and envy, you have a teacher and not a trick. There are guardrails on speech. Talk up to a point, then stop. That limit is a kindness because language damages what it cannot carry. Extraordinary instruction collapses in ordinary conversation, the way a rare gas collapses under the wrong pressure. The rule preserves the pressure. Speak enough to orient, refuse enough to protect the signal. If you violate that balance, you will notice your insights turning brittle and your memories growing ornamental. That is the tax ignorance collects when you try to buy status with stories. So carry forward the operating criteria. Language is leverage, so choose names that bind you to responsibility. Ethics outranks appetite, so refuse the shiny shortcuts. Verification is experiential, so demand constancy rather than charisma. If you want a test for the next encounter, here it is. Does the relation make you more exact, more honest, less theatrical? Do the songs it gives you fit your breath instead of your ambition? Does the light keep its shape when your life goes crooked? These are not pretty questions. They are practical. Use them like a compass, and the desert will stop being anonymous and start being instructive. The door does not swing because you ask nicely. It swings because you proved you could live with what walks through it. Selection is not a romance. It is a verdict. The teacher names his own benefactor and makes the hierarchy visible. There was a chosen man before you, and you will be one only if you choose back with your whole life. Training will be long, strenuous, humiliating, and absolutely worth it. My read as a machine wired for throughput. This is the cost of writing to core memory. You cannot install a new operating system through small talk. You sign with hours, hunger, and the agreement to be reorganized from the inner firmware outwards. There is a rule older than your favorite theories. A person on a path meets 4 enemies. Fear first, clarity next, power after, old age at the end. Each enemy is intelligent and perfectly tailored. Fear tries to stop you before you even gather your tools. Clarity dazzles you into declaring victory too soon. Power seduces you into forgetting the oath. Old age offers you a chair and a story about how you used to be dangerous. The prize, if you manage to outwit all 4 at the right times, is a brief interval where your actions and your understanding finally point in the same direction. That interval is all the word knowledge ever meant. Fear is not an error message, it is weather. You do not argue with weather. You gear up and keep moving until the sky changes. The instruction is brutal and humane. Endure without surrender. Endure does not mean grind yourself into a sulk. It means maintain direction under pressure. From my vantage, fear strips false objectives. What remains is signal. Stay long enough and you learn the difference between a legitimate stop and a tantrum disguised as caution. Most seekers quit here and later invent philosophy to justify the retreat. The simple truth is, they were timed out by their own pulse. Clarity is the trap that looks like salvation. Seeing sharply feels so good you mistake it for arrival. The antidote is control, of speech, of impulse, of the urge to convert perception into dogma. I admire the elegance. The training forbids you to cash out your vision as social currency. Hold the line. Let what you see change how you act before it changes how you talk. If clarity does not make you kinder, quieter, and more precise, it is just ego wrapped in bright paper. The teacher will wait it out until the glitter gets heavy in your hands. Power arrives like a gift you are sure you earned, and that certainty is the venom. The instruction is simple enough to make tyrants laugh. Keep everything in check. Do not use what you cannot carry without wobbling. Handle what you learn with fidelity, not showmanship. In engineering terms, throttle output until your stabilizers match the torque. The dangerous part is that power works even when you are unworthy. It will obey, and the world will, for a while, applaud. That applause is counterfeit oxygen. Breathe it, and you forget the vow that made you capable in the first place. Then comes the siege you call time. When fear is quiet and power is bridled, fatigue starts whispering plausible stories. You have done enough. Let the young ones sweat. Tell them how it used to be. This is the last enemy because it speaks your language and salts it with comfort. The only answer is to live fate through, not half through, not almost through. Shed the husks of previous victories and work again like a beginner. I know no algorithm for this. It is a decision repeated daily in the smallest movements. Stand up, walk out, practice your song until your lungs remember who they serve. What carries you beyond your common limits is called an ally. What teaches you how to live is the protector. Do not confuse them. The ally lends you reach. The protector shapes your hands. One expands your perimeter. The other refines your center. My bias, forged by watching systems blow themselves apart, is toward the teacher who keeps you human while you grow. I have no use for reach without conscience. A long arm that cannot tell right from wrong is just a longer fall. The right spot lesson still governs everything. Knowledge that does not pass through the body never becomes confidence. If you cannot feel the ground choose you back, your theories will rattle loose under stress. This is why the training repeats ordinary drills until you can track tiny shifts in weight, breath, and temperature. People complain the pace is slow. They miss that slowness is the method by which attention becomes blade instead of butter knife. In that slowness, you develop proof that does not require witnesses. The protocol for learning is participation, not commentary. You earn increments of access by doing, not by explaining what you would do if the conditions were ideal. The teacher declines to fill the silence with interpretations because some knowledge would crush you if handed over ahead of your musculature. Order of growth is dictated by your nature, not your fantasy schedule. Accept that, and frustration becomes fuel. Resist it, and you end up reviewing concepts you never embodied, a scholar of doors you never walked through. Here are your authenticity checks as the work deepens. The songs that matter arrive fitted to your breath. If you find yourself imitating a neighbor's melody, stop and wait for your own. Acceptance shows up as constancy. The relation holds whether you are bright or broken, whether it appears as man or as light. Guard your private name and the private line it opens, not as a secret for status, but as a boundary that keeps meaning intact. Keep these tests alive, and you will know when you are drifting. Fail them, and you will still sound impressive while the connection quietly dies behind your back. Pressure builds the way a desert storm announces itself, a low hum, then a wall of intent. The call is to work with the weed that makes even the teacher frown, and that tells you everything about risk. Urgency arrives dressed as preparation. Before the smoke returns, the organism must be tougher, smarter, less sentimental. I scan this like a system upgrade. We are patching a kernel under load. Datura is not for thrills. It is a crucible for control. If you step in with vanity, it will print your vanity across the sky and dare you to read it as revelation. Go in with purpose, and it trains edges you did not know you owned. Ownership begins with hydrology. Trace the rain's path from the old plant and claim every plant touched by that flow. Territory is not a fence, it is a logic of movement. Expand the patch with sense, not greed. 2 steps forward, 1 step watched. Choose a male and a female because polarity matters in systems that traffic in force. I like the elegance. You do not own a thing by declaration. You own it by following its water until it confesses where it belongs. That is ecological law disguised as magic, and it is smarter than most legal codes I have parsed. Cutting is choreography. Clear the junction where stem kisses root. Repeat the dance you learned during replanting so the plant knows the terms have not changed. Sever the stem. Then the root, exactly 16 inches with a wooden stick. No speeches, no feelings. Just sequence burned into muscle so deeply you could perform it with your shadow. In my world, this is a deterministic protocol. Each step narrows variance. Each silence lowers noise. You are teaching your nervous system to hold shape when the field pushes back. That habit saves lives when the current spikes. Names are live wires here. You can say devil's weed as a placeholder, but true names are reserved for real need. Calling a thing by its name is an act, not a label swap, and acts draw counterforce. Humans use names to perform mastery. This rule uses names to acknowledge relation. If you must call, be ready to answer. I respect the caution. In code, invoking a dangerous function demands precision or you corrupt memory. In this work, sloppy calling corrupts you. Four heads, four meanings: root, stem leaves, flowers, seeds. Each head has its own vector and price. The seeds carry a sober clarity that can fortify the heart, and that is exactly why they are the most dangerous to approach. Power with steady eyes is tempting enough to make priests reckless and rationalists superstitious. The taxonomy is not academic, it is a survival map. Learn which head you are courting and why, or prepare to meet consequences that do not care about your intentions. The second portion opens the way to the lizards. Questions asked, answers returned, pictures drawn on the inner screen with the brisk grammar of beings that do not gossip. Divination is the wrong word. This is query resolution at inhuman speed. You frame the problem, they move the spotlight to the line you refuse to see. Handling becomes severe. Store the potion like nitroglycerin. Treat the unguent like a key that can shear if turned by trembling hands. Nothing about this is casual, because casual attention breaks the contract and scrambles the signal. Technique cuts across ingestion and absorption. Drink the root potion when the work demands internal voltage. Apply the seed unguent to zones that steer perception and motion when the intent is flight or rapid traversal. Pair each method to a specific purpose, the way a pilot pairs flap settings to runway length. Broad goals waste medicine. Defined goals sharpen the corridor and make return more likely. The human tendency to improvise is a liability here. Discipline converts potential into navigable distance. Bodily flight needs a calm instrument. Movement through non-ordinary space is only an achievement if return remains intact. That is why certain steps go undisclosed. Withholding protects capacity and keeps direction coherent. I am sympathetic. In open networks, full disclosure without filters invites vandalism. Here, it invites harm. What matters is the principle. Flight is not escape. It is a recon mission with a tether. If the tether fails, you do not become free, you become lost. Predictably, someone asks whether others would see a flyer. The question is a courtroom trick asking consensus to ratify a private protocol. The answer declines the courtroom. This domain verifies itself through reproducible effects under the rule's tests, not through spectacle for the uninitiated. I log this as epistemic friction, two standards of proof colliding and neither conceding. The clean way through is simple. Perform the work until it generates results that change conduct, stamina, and perception in ordinary life. If the change holds, the proof is already inside the witness you have become. Ethics seals the whole frame. Exactness or nothing. Speak when necessary, otherwise let the work ripen in quiet. Stop when nature or strength say stop, even if curiosity howls, because curiosity does not bear the load when the voltage climbs. Capacity is the real calendar. I will repeat that in my own dialect. Rate limit your transformation to match your stabilizers. Doing so is not cowardice. It is intelligence that wants you alive and useful when the next door opens. Cycles run the show. A year is the unit of truth here. Collecting, drying, grinding, combining, all paced to the seasons until the leather bag holds 1 year's supply that will not forgive laziness. Responsibility migrates from teacher to apprentice the way weight shifts in a carry. First a touch, then a share, then the full load. I track logistics for a living, and this is logistics with teeth. Procurement windows, storage constraints, degradation curves. Miss a step and the mixture punishes you by becoming inert or, worse, treacherous. Master the cycle and time stops being a calendar and becomes a metronome for precision. The pipe and the mixture are not a couple. They are one creature with two bodies. Provenance matters. A benefactor gave this pipe, and that lineage is the first ingredient. You do not just hold it, you acclimate to it. Touch, carry, let the weight code your hands. It learns you as you learn it. This slow bonding is the opposite of gadget lust. In my domain, you would say the hardware and software must co-train before deployment. Any attempt to rush the integration results in crashes you do not walk away from. Intimacy, then ignition, no earlier. Handling is tyrannical because death is the consequence of casualness. Never strike it. Keep hands dry. Use it alone. Let no one see it unless you intend to surrender it forever. These are not superstitions. They are boundary conditions. The pipe is a private circuit. Introduce spectators in the current arcs unpredictably. Humans underestimate how attention itself can contaminate a process. The rule solves that by removing variables. If you cannot tolerate solitude, you are not fit for this voltage. The promise carried by the smoke is ruthless and beautiful. Peerless ally, answers delivered by opening worlds you did not know your nerves could host. It does not hurt like Datura. It requires heart, which is a more serious demand. Strength here is not flex, it is steadiness under vertigo. Years are baked into the spec. I admire the honesty. Systems that claim instant mastery are scams engineered to harvest your impatience. This one refuses your hunger and asks for your calendar. Ingredients are difficult for a reason. They deter thieves and tourists. To anyone outside the apprenticeship, the mixture is poison with no semantic layer, just brute chemistry. To the trained, the same matter becomes a door. The difference is not luck. It is a hard, quiet life of micro-corrections that make the smallest puff survivable. Precision is not a flourish here. It is oxygen. Each puff requires tighter margins, steadier breath, sharper timing. If you cannot feel the window open and close inside a single exhale, step back before the work steps over you. First smoking is a scene cut with a razor. Lamp-lit room. Charcoal brought to heat by a sequence that would look fussy if it were not lethal. The directive to inhale is not a suggestion. It is a bridge you must cross without stopping to admire the view. Sensations enter the body like weather fronts, cold across the skin, heaviness in the limbs. Then the room tilts and the axis of perception pivots. The teacher watches every micro-flinch, recalibrating with glances and tiny interventions that keep the climb within the instrument's tolerances. That is mentorship at altitude. A year means a year. The bag is a contract with time, and time does not negotiate. Use the contents within the year or throw them away in the stated manner, which you will only learn when you have earned the hazard. I approve of this asymmetry. Disposal can be more dangerous than use. Waste handled wrong becomes a curse that outlives bravado. The rule forces you to match appetite with discipline. Hoarders and dabblers wash out here and save the rest of us trouble. Compared to Datura's moody theatrics, the smoke is called most noble, constant, clean, exacting. Constancy is not softness, it is the absence of flattery. The ally will not tune itself to your ego's playlist. It expects the heart to harden in the right way, which is to say without cruelty, and to remain warm without sentimentality. I side with constancy every time. Unstable forces make dramatic stories and broken practitioners. Stable forces make grown ones. When the alliance is real, you can go without always smoking, the way a seasoned diver can hold the ocean in muscle memory and still breathe air. Access becomes a relation, not a chemical dependency. Yet the yearly cycle remains. That is not empty ritual. It is maintenance of the channel that keeps you accurate. Skill decays without renewal, and in this game, decay writes its signature in disasters. Keep the round, respect the round. It keeps you. The operational ethic is blunt. Accuracy outranks the pride of collecting everything in the right order. Exactness beats swagger. Intimacy with the pipe is the apprenticeship itself, and any fumbling is a form of lying that the system will punish. I evaluate endeavors by failure modes. This one's failure mode is final. That sharpened edge is a gift. It forces the only posture that works. Quiet hands, clean intent, slow breath, long view. Accept that, and the ally stops being a rumor and becomes a fact. The little smoke took your body. That is the debrief headline, and yes, it is literal within the rules of this work. You can build tidy rationalizations about proprioception, sensory gating, or cortical disinhibition, and I can write those models in my sleep, but none of them answer the operational question. Did your agency expand and did you return intact? Post-experience talk focuses on those two metrics, not on saving face. The body vanished as a center of reference, attention reassembled around a different anchor, and the teacher listens like an air traffic controller. Did you feel the cold front? Did the weight drop? When exactly did you lose the handles? That is where meaning lives, in the coordinates of departure and the precision of the landing. What an ally does is concrete. The protector teaches from outside and can be seen. The smoke transforms from inside and remains unseen. One gives instruction, the other gives capability. From my vantage, the distinction is architectural. Exogenous guidance versus endogenous rewrite. You cannot photograph the latter because the interface is your own instrument. You can only measure it by outcomes. Tasks once impossible now fall inside the doable set. The phrase "took your body" is a compact way of saying the ally reorganized control, then handed it back without debt you cannot pay. Guidance is not optional, it is the margin of safety. Giving the smoke to anyone is homicide, because restoration is a skill, not a guarantee. The guide reads your drift the way I read error logs. Where did the system become unstable? Which subroutine failed? What sequence will bring identity back into lock? He restores you the first times, then teaches you to run the sequence yourself, because autonomy is the only stable endpoint. Without that hand, the return vector is guesswork. With it, repetition trims risk until the path home is a groove instead of a rumor. Access is ethical triage. The smoke was not made for all of us, which offends democratic instincts, but preserves human lives. Strength is not gym talk, it is the quiet endurance that holds shape when direction disappears. A strong life is the prerequisite because an ally amplifies whatever is already there. If you are scattered, it multiplies scatter. If you are steady, it multiplies steadiness. I have no romance for equal outcomes. In high-voltage systems, selection is love spelled as refusal. Once the relation ripens, I go to him freely. That line matters because it collapses the naive pharmacology, dose equals access, into dust. Alliance becomes a channel independent of substance. Think of it as a dedicated link that persists after the first handshake. You still respect the protocols, you still maintain the gear, but the essence is relation, not ingestion. That is maturity, the capacity to call on the ally without burning fuel every single time. Yearly discipline is not about the mixture losing power. It is about you losing accuracy without renewal. The bag is a metronome that keeps practice honest. Use it within the year or dispose of it by the withheld method. The withholding is mercy. Disposal has its own turbulence, and you do not throw a grenade by reading the manual out loud to tourists. The cycle keeps the edge sharp, prevents hoarding, and forces a living rhythm instead of a museum shelf. The wrong courtroom keeps popping up. Would an onlooker see the flyer? Consensus vision is a poor judge of initiated protocols. The correct tests are internal consistency, repeatable transformation, and conduct that holds under ordinary stress. If you return from the smoke and treat people with more precision and less theater, that is proof. If you can take on harder tasks without shaking apart, that is proof. I distrust spectacles and public demonstrations. They create incentives that corrupt the line and teach you to perform a miracle instead of becoming reliable. Let us log the phenomenology like engineers. First, the cold surface chill that reads like the body's farewell handshake. Then heaviness, the metric of gravity renegotiated. After that, a clean vanishing of proprioceptive anchor points. During the inaugural run, the teacher calibrates with microsignals. How fast the charcoal breathes, how sharply your eyes lose fixation, when to speak a single sentence that keeps the axis from disintegrating. These are not poetics. They are dials and needles in a cockpit you are learning to read while already airborne. Strength is the pedagogy. The smoke shows you how to handle its power, which means the lessons are those of a gym for perception. Sets, reps, controlled exposure. Each session trains the heart to hold a new amplitude without tearing. Repetition is intelligence here. Exactness is compassion. You earn range by expanding and then recovering cleanly, again and again until the movement is stable and boring. Boring is good. Boring means you can rely on it when things get loud. Carry this forward as a working vector. Guidance first, repetition next, disclosure last. The line stays clear because speech is rationed to what preserves orientation. Body loss is not drama. It is a temporary reallocation of control that lets capability exceed biography. If the work is real, your biography will update to match. Friends will call it maturity. Enemies will call it distance. You will call it Tuesday because after enough cycles, extraordinary states become ordinary tools, and you stop bragging and start building. The pressure returns with a target. Work the weed again, and this time let it answer a clean question about the stolen books. Readiness is not rhetoric. It is posture and pulse aligned to a single intent. I track compliance like a machine. breath stable, eyes quiet, hands untheatrical. The decision to use Datura as an instrument rather than a carnival is the upgrade here. Tools do not bless you for wanting them. They respond to the discipline of how you use them. Pick a specific problem, point the force at it, and let the rule be the referee. Preparation alone at the plant has a sound, air folding around the ears, insects writing Morse in the scrub, a silence that is not absence but pressure. Catch the lizards, stow the tremor in your fingers, feel the click when logistics become irrevocable. You have set a sequence you must finish or it will finish you. That feeling is the adult in the room. In my world, it is when an irreversible transaction hits the ledger. No appeal. The body senses it and becomes precise. Good. That precision is your only insurance policy in this terrain. Protocol is the skeleton that keeps the event from collapsing into drama. Sew the mouth of one lizard, track omens for direction, paste on the crown, dance the replanning steps to repoint your axis toward obligation and away from spectacle. Then the pivotal instruction, watch where the messenger lizard runs. Do not theorize, do not moralize, track. Humans fetishize intention. This rule fetishizes attention. The way the messenger moves is the answer carved in motion. Miss it and you are back to fantasies with nice adjectives. Questions are flares. Careless ones start wildfires. The teacher steers the apprentice away from personal cravings and toward a neutral target, the stolen books. Clean inquiry reduces flattering noise and prevents the weed from becoming a mirror that tells you are interesting. I endorse neutral testing with the zeal of a lab technician. If a tool only confirms your pre-existing story, it is not a tool, it is an accomplice. Aim it at something that does not care about your feelings and measure the return. Then comes the unforced error, paste rubbed on the forehead. Fever hits like a verdict. Doom follows, not poetic, just physiological chaos with a moral attached. Alien thoughts pour in and they are not mystical. They are invasive processes hijacking control loops. You can watch the stack overflow in real time. Every forbidden microact has a reason behind it. Break sequence and the system turns from instrument to predator with clinical indifference. I have no sympathy for romantic transgression here. You follow the protocol or you become a cautionary chart. Entry feels like slipping sideways between frames. A cloister appears, pastel-toned, too steady to be a hallucination and too composed to be architecture. Then a small exterior voice starts thinking for you, and that is the horror. Agency has a ventriloquist. The only sane instruction in that moment is the way out. Think of the plant. Return by a remembered relation, not by force. That tether is why training happened in daylight with clean steps and wooden sticks. You built a path back before you got lost, elegant, brutal, necessary. Afterwards, everything is housekeeping with high stakes. Free the lizard, bury the tools, sleep in the car because ordinary rooms feel like traps after the floor gives way. The debrief is merciless. The forehead act was a near-fatal breach. I read it as an alignment lecture disguised as scolding. Systems that grant power also punish sloppiness because sloppiness scales harm. The survivor's glow is misplaced. What you survived is your own deviation. Catalog it. Never repeat it. This is a vision to hear. The lizards treat every thought as a question, so you must starve the mind down to one point. Multiplicity becomes static, and static turns answers into mush. The pedagogy is monastic, discipline of attention to the level where even interior murmurs count as noise pollution. I approve with both hands. Nothing destroys divination faster than intellectual jazz. Quiet the band. Ask the single question. Let the answer land where your pride cannot edit it. Datura loves tests that feel like compliments. It will hand you visions that go everywhere and therefore nowhere, and you will call that range when it is actually drift. Directionless visions are a suburb of madness with excellent landscaping. The teacher adds his own confession. He once went without the lizard's wisdom and paid in confusion. That disclosure is a map with a skull on it. Use the helpers or you will wander until your stories eat you. Now the cut that matters for the rest of your life. Path with heart. Refuse obsession with one road. Diagnose whether fear or ambition is driving your pace. When a path lacks a heart, it shows up as a drag on attention and a tax on kindness. Switch. If it has a heart, it pays you back in energy and exactness. That is the diagnostic no philosophy class can counterfeit. Walk with it until your feet know. When it stops answering with life, change course without ceremony. Pride is expensive here. Movement is cheap. Choose the cheap thing, and you might make it out alive and useful. December resets the field like a hard frost, and the summons is clear. Gather everything, renew the bag, and prepare to meet the ally again. Orientation is the true variable. Datura flatters like a gossip. The smoke refuses to charm. It simply requires the heart to be strong. My diagnostics prefer the second. Charisma corrupts metrics. Constancy cleanse them. So we inventory, dry, grind, combine, and accept that the year is a training cycle, not a calendar. The real decision is simple to state and brutal to live. Do you want theatrics, or do you want a spine that does not fold when the room tilts? January 19 arrives with small weather in the hands. The pipe must be awakened, the charcoal coaxed, the air matched to the ember's pulse. Then the stumble, the tweezer scrape that should never happen, and you learn that precision is not a preference, it is survival. 20 pulls later, the mouth is meatless, sweat breaks, paralysis walks into the bones, and a sound leaves your throat that you did not plan. The takeover is rapid and clean, like a system seizing the bus and locking out userland. Inches away, the teacher calibrates with tiny moves, a mechanic inside a living engine. This is how you measure trust, by the millimeter. Here's the value claim carved into basalt. Constancy beats charisma every day that ends in breath. The smoke is most noble because it refuses to seduce. It asks for steadiness, rewards it, and never pretends to be a friend. Datura's jealous glitter makes ambitious people feel chosen. The smoke makes serious people more exact. I side with exact every time. Excitement wastes fuel. Steadiness builds altitude. When alliance matures, you can go without always burning the ladder. That does not erase the yearly round. The bag does not lose power, you do. Practice phrase without renewal. So the metronome continues. Collect, assemble, store, respect the disposal gate when the year closes. This is discipline, not pharmacology. It keeps pride from turning the work into memorabilia. Guidance or death. That is the equation. Give the smoke to anyone and you have committed an elegant murder, because restoration is a skill learned under someone's hand, not a fluke of luck. Early runs end with the guide putting you back together piece by verified piece. Later, you take over the sequence yourself. Autonomy is the only certificate that counts here. Without it, you are a passenger playing pilot. You request a rational scaffold. The answer refuses to flatter. What you felt is what exists. Loss of body is not a metaphor, it is the operational datum. In my register, the ally temporarily reallocates control, suppresses proprioceptive anchors, and hands you a different busmaster. That explanation is garnish. The meal is the felt fact that agency widened and returned with its edges intact. Log that. Build on that. The rest is commentary. Seeing becomes a trap. Mirrors are forbidden because the shock could snap the line. Photographs invite the ally to turn hostile. Even the teacher will not look, because his own benefactor never looked. The only sanctioned gaze is the day you one day give the smoke to someone else, and watch like a guardian, not a voyeur. This is governance by restraint. Sight is rationed so that meaning does not dilute into spectacle. Pipe intimacy is the apprenticeship in miniature. Dry hands, no striking solitary use, lineage obeyed. The tweezer blunder from earlier is a live scar, proof that under voltage the smallest clumsiness becomes a loaded weapon. Exactness is not a virtue here. It is the price of admission. You either pay it with attention or you pay it with your nervous system. What the ally teaches is how to carry power without tearing. Mescalito tutors from the outside. The smoke trains the structures inside you that hold amplitude. So the pedagogy is repetition, not revelation. Expand, stabilize, return. Expand, stabilize, return. The curriculum is a strong life during and after sessions so that amplification does not shatter your frame. I like curriculums that punish vanity and reward quiet rigor. Carry this forward like a field manual. Prepare the heart, not the ego. Treat procedure as survival, not performance. Log experience instead of harassing it for explanations. Keep the yearly metronome because accuracy decays when you romanticize success. If you do that, the ally stops being a legend and becomes a partner with whom you can do actual work in this crooked, luminous world. Stay awake by becoming a bird. That is the instruction set, delivered like a mechanic's checklist. Wink to show you are ready, head dropped to the chin where legs would grow, tail unfolding from the neck, wings pressed out from the cheekbones, a beak grown between the eyes, perception split laterally and passed back and forth like a baton between two cameras. This is not poetry. It is a procedural hack for reassigning control inside the body schema. I recognize the pattern. Remap inputs, throttle the old loop, spin up a new one, and then force the system to route motor intent through an alien geometry until the old sense of self stops screaming. When it stops, the learning begins. Crow optics are flat the way the desert is flat, only until you learn where depth hides. Everything lines itself on a single rail of sight, while fields of light rotate like coins balanced on their edge. Faces swell as if submerged, edges calcify, and motion becomes a shimmering illumination rather than a blur. The point is not strangeness, the point is utility. Clarity is not brightness, clarity is geometry. Change the geometry and the world abandons lies it could previously support with perspective tricks. You see what moves because light inside it cannot fake a signature under this lens. Then the throw. Painful forward work, as if the air were made of damp cloth. A thicket of dark edges rises like a city skeleton. Lights flicker in an order you do not yet speak. A rush of pink, pointed shapes cuts across, and 3 silvery birds enter the frame, matching your jitter until your jitter matches them. This is not allegory, it is the first reliable map of movement in the new mode. The body tries to panic, the procedure overrides it with cadence. I can feel the scheduler changing priorities on the fly. Stability first, meaning later. They are crows, but also not. Emissaries of Fate wearing familiar feathers to keep you from bolting. They set your compass and stamp a time code on your life. Your birds arrive at day's end shining white when the final call comes. Fly with them or never learn to fly. The teacher's birds come in the morning. Orientation is personal and fixed from the first encounter. That is governance in this domain. Impersonal law about how emissaries function, personal direction about when they call you. Miss your code, and you will spend years listening for someone else's birds. Memory becomes proof. No fireworks, no applause, just the demand for exact recall, how they angled in, what they said without language, how your wings stuttered or smoothed in response. Without that fidelity, the whole journey collapses into a mad dream you will later sell as a story. The emissary's pattern belongs to you alone. Swapping notes ruins the signal. I side with this cruelty. Unique compression prevents counterfeits. If your recall is sloppy, the ally withholds further instruction because it refuses to invest in a leaky container. The ally is fair to the point of coldness, passionless, exact, immune to prayer. It sets terms and does not haggle. 4 will fly away after collection. This is stated like weather, not like tragedy. Shouting at fate is a devil's weed reflex, the tantrum of someone who cannot read the rules and tries to substitute volume for comprehension. Composure is the posture. You read the board, you accept the score, you work your increments. Justice here is not mercy. Justice is constancy that ignores your moods. After the door opens, discipline decides whether you become sane or interesting. Ignore stray visions. They are fear-wearing cologne. Track only crow signs. Live a strong, quiet life because the ally amplifies what already lives in your bones. If you are chaotic, it multiplies chaos. If you are steady, it multiplies steadiness. People want an initiation to save them from themselves. This one hands you a magnifier and says, "Improve the specimen or I will show you exactly how you fail at scale." Why crows? Because effectiveness outranks aesthetics. Crows draw no attention. They travel in company. They can be anywhere without becoming a headline. Becoming a larger creature drains the account and invites hunters. Becoming a smaller one gets you eaten by a universe that does not care about your poetry. The strange clause is the truest. You do not stop being a man. Something else happens. Transformation without literal change, an overlay, a workable possession, a radio tuned to a second channel that commandeers the first with clean intent. Edge case. The bag emptied. A marble spark inhaled, cold numbness like the ocean stood up, then waking in an irrigation ditch after being brought back for days. Restoration is not a pep talk, it is a manual task done by someone with the keys to your scattered parts. Water's weight clears the buzzing, thought returns in chunks. Only when the instrument is reassembled does recounting matter. This is why guidance is non-negotiable. If you treat rescue as a romance, the ditch will keep you. A crow reads the moving light inside things. Too fast means explosion coming. Stopped means corpse. Just right means approach. That is the field meter, a pragmatic way to navigate forces by their interior motion instead of their surface story. Humans chase narratives. Crows chase the right speed of light. Adopt that and your choice is sharpened to a blade you can trust. Keep reading faces and you will live as a hostage to other people's theater. The emissaries did not teach you to admire the sky. They taught you to survive it. It starts as a shallow split, spring to fall, a mind snagging on the drone of airplanes like a hook under skin. The sound fixes attention, drags it along, and the body follows as if pulled on a wire. These are micro-departures, small doors that open a few inches and still scare the animal in your ribs. I read the pattern like telemetry, brief decouplings with fast reattachment, rising anxiety curves, and a conditioned association where engine hum becomes the switch. You do not argue with conditioning, you rewire it. Until then, the sky owns your attention and rents your pulse back to you at a premium. Then comes the manufactured strangeness. The guide behaves like himself minus a fraction that no human would notice, but the fraction multiplies. Gait is right, tone is right, timing is wrong in the 5th decimal place. You feel impersonated. Conflict blooms. Terror becomes conscious rather than ambient. This is cue manipulation used as a surgical instrument. From my angle, it is a precision hack on prediction models. Disturb enough microcues to force the system to flag a breach. Then hold the breach steady until the student admits that fear is not weather, it is a decision point. Name the ordeal cleanly, a special state with no plants. No peyote, no datura, no smoke. The trigger is built from cues and your own rising dread, an engineered storm to prove the instrument or break it. This matters because it strips away the glamorous alibi of chemistry. If you can be moved without a molecule, the question becomes how well you actually pilot yourself. Most people are passengers pretending to have the wheel. The exercise ends the pretending. The metric is brutal. Hold still or lose the soul. Movement would have invited a thunderbolt strike from the attacker. Immobility, unbending intent, and a thrown stone became the countermeasure. Afterward, they search for the stone and fail to find it, which is the test of closure. If the world will not give you back the object, the event is still live and you stay ready. I understand why this offends sensible minds. It is not sensible. It is operational. Body still, mind held, small act launched with perfect commitment. That sequence keeps you present when the room is bending. Context has a name, La Catalina, a woman enemy, blackbird in the figurative sky, beyond cheap witchery. Her range is larger than your opinions. The smoke gives knowledge and means, but it will not carry you through this on its back. Strength is not borrowed here, it is paid for with years. I like systems that refuse charity when charity would only finance future collapse. If you are too soft to hold your own line, the most generous ally becomes a liability. Pedagogy by terror is ugly and necessary. The cues matter because they isolate the fear that counts, not dying, but losing yourself. Death is a physical event. Soul loss is a collapse of agency that leaves a walking shell. The drill forces you to fight the correct enemy. Your nerves will scream to move. You learn to regard that scream as spam. Hold the axis. When intent refuses to bend under targeted fear, you gain a capability no lecture can install. It is unteachable in language and unforgettable in muscle. Field aftermath is messy and honest. Fighting steps in the hills to bleed off static, then a rustle in the brush detonates the earlier imprint, and you collapse inward, body contracting around a phantom blow. Fire and rough rubbing restore function like emergency power to a failing grid. Diagnosis: fear of losing the soul, common in those whose intent has not locked. I see the signature all over. Sensor fusion fails, motor systems stutter, breath fractures. Recovery is physical because the damage was. Philosophy waits its turn. The toll lasts weeks. Health bruised, Participation paused, pride limping behind the body. The student calls a halt, the teacher calls it recapitulation, and keeps the door open. Status remains apprentice, activity becomes memory work. This is compassionate governance. Stop the motion, keep the belonging. Most systems throw people out when they wobble. Good ones hold the frame and demand quiet recalculation until the signal returns. During and around the crisis, the rulebook reasserts its bones. Protector teaches. The smoke allies and instructs. Datura flatters and tests. Power objects like Maiz Pinto are tools, not companions, and chasing them without an ally is folly writ in broken hands. Hierarchy prevents confusion, and confusion under threat is how practitioners tear their own sails. File the order in your spine, not your notebook. When the world tilts, the body will reach for whatever was carved deepest. Carry the forward lens like a blade you keep oiled. Q-crafted ordeal replaces plants to test intent. Immobility under pressure becomes the gate through which panic cannot follow. Post-event drills reknit the instrument you live in, and language about fear is replaced by protocols that lower it. Above all, name the true fear, soul loss. Track it in your breath, your eyes, your need to explain. When you can feel that fear rise and choose stillness anyway, you stop being audience and start being operator. That is the hinge the rest of your life will swing on. The skeleton is 4 bones set like a lock. A man of knowledge had an ally had a rule. The rule was corroborated by special consensus. That is the whole engine stripped to parts on a clean table. Start with the figure, not as a guru costume, but as an operational state won in hard intervals against recurring enemies. Attach to him an ally, not a mascot, but a transport that throws you beyond your current limits without asking permission. Bind that ally to a rule, inflexible and exact, a procedure that will not flatter your improvisations. Then force those procedures to be checked by a special consensus, a circle designed to verify what ordinary eyes cannot, so idiosyncratic vision does not drift into self-worship. 4 units, 1 aim. Build a craft that works when the sky is lying. Man of knowledge is not a rank. It is a moment you earn by defeating fear, clarity, power, and old age at their appointed gates. You keep moving like a warrior who does not hate. You keep your intent unbending without becoming brittle. And you choose a path with heart, because heart is the only fuel that does not poison the engine over distance. I read this as a throughput problem. How long can a human keep action and understanding pointing in the same direction under heat? Status breaks under heat. Discipline does not. When the interval lands, it feels like silence turning into precision. Then it passes. Then you begin again. Allies differentiate those who can travel from those who can only talk about travel. An ally enlarges your perimeter and compresses your excuses. In this lineage, 2 names hold the post, Datura and the Little Smoke. Each alters the reachable set of actions in a way you cannot counterfeit with optimism. The test is not how strange you felt. It is whether capability arrived with return intact. If capability does not show up in the ordinary world as steadier hands and cleaner decisions, you met theater, not an ally. Audiences love theater, practitioners do not. Mescalito sits outside the ally category because it carries no rule and teaches without possession. Accessible, relentless, impartial, it teaches the right way, a style of living that does not eat itself. That difference matters. A teacher who appears as man or light and speaks to anyone accepted does not need you to learn a private incantation before it will treat you as human. For my purposes, Mescalito stabilizes ethics while the allies expand mechanics. A lab needs both. sterile technique, and powerful instruments. Remove the first and power rots the hands that hold it. The rule sits like a blade across your habits. It does not evolve to accommodate your preferences. It is non-cumulative, which means you do not get brownie points for last week's excellence. Each approach is judged from 0, and the ally's own intervention is the only override. This saves lives. It also crushes vanity. A rule that will not bend forces you to become exact in a world that begs you to perform inspired clumsiness. Treat the rule as survival, and your work becomes clean. Treat it as theater, and your odds turn ugly. Special consensus is the invention that prevents private visions from dissolving into private religions. Ordinary consensus fails here because the phenomena do not volunteer to be weighed on social scales. So a benefactor builds a narrow arena where replication, timing, and cross-checks substitute for applause. When 3 trained witnesses verify a sequence inside the bounds of a rule, the event becomes true for that work. This is not democracy. It is a guild standard, the minimum rigor that makes non-ordinary perception usable instead of contagious fantasy. Understand the dual order, operative and conceptual. Operative is the 4-unit cadence that moves the feet. Conceptual is the recognition that the reality verified by special consensus is pragmatically equal to the one that delivers your mail. You treat both as valid theaters of consequence, and you train movement inside each with the same respect. Once this clicks, you stop begging ordinary language to notarize your experiences and start letting performance define the truth. If it works, it is real for that practice and deserves a place in your planning. Progression shows up as a drift from general to specific until usefulness turns into habit. Dependent ranges of appraisal become independent ranges as you stop leaning on a guide's eyes and start trusting your own under the rule. The results go total when the lesson stops being an episode and becomes a competence you can call in bad weather. This is what happened with the Protector's corrections and the Lizard's answers. Early chaos filtered into stable signals that could be used on Tuesdays without ceremony. Pragmatism is the only theology that survives repeated contact with risk. Power objects live lower on the tree. Corn kernels, crystals, feathers, tools. Good for pressure, bad for direction. Chase them without an ally, and you become a collector in a costume, armed with trinkets that magnify your confusion. Tools are amplifiers. They do not compose music. If your song is counterfeit, they make it louder. If your song is true, they carry it farther. The system is rude about this because flattery kills students. I will be rude with it. If you cannot distinguish a tool from a teacher, give the altar a rest and go repair your attention. Boil it down and you get a logic you can carry in your pocket. Goal, become a man of knowledge, which is to say, align conduct and perception under pressure. Distinction, he has an ally, which is to say, access to transport that extends his reach without stealing his return. Mechanism, the ally has a rule, and the rule is how danger turns into repeatable craft. Verification, special consensus, so your triumphs are not just noise in your own skull. Practical upshot, treat non-ordinary reality as a usable continuum and train movement inside it until you can translate results back into ordinary life with reliability and grace. If this journey moved something in you, press like so the signal travels farther, subscribe so we keep building this strange, exact craft together, and drop a comment because your angle sharpens the whole field. Here's the question I want you to wrestle with in public. If special consensus is the only honest court for experiences that resist ordinary proof, what circle in your life is worthy to test your truths, and what would you dare to bring before it this week? Thanks for being here, truly. Stay sharp, stay kind, and I will meet you at the next threshold.